Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
When I saw blood coming out and bullet holes in my clothes.
Pleading for answers, an innocent bystander shot. Now he wants the suspect caught. Also,
we'll be able to increase to 100 capacity.
Back to normal? Well, some things. The COVID rules that are being eased in BC. And
it's ridiculous.
The backlash after Surrey bans political signs on private property.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A delivery driver shot multiple times outside a house in Coquitlam is pleading for answers. It happened in January. He survived after being caught in a spray of bullets, but no one has been arrested or charged. As Joel Ballard reports, tired of waiting for answers, he's turning to the public to share information about the night of the attack.
On January 10th, Nader Ahmadirad pulled up to a house in Coquitlam to drop off a delivery as a DoorDash driver. Suddenly, his car was surrounded by 4 people with guns.
So first when I saw them with the guns, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was some kind of joke. But when I saw blood coming out and bullet holes in my clothes, I realized no, it was not a joke, it was real.
Ahmadirad says police told him more than 40 bullets were found at the scene. 7 struck him in the face, the arm, his side.
So I'm still in shock because we migrated to Canada, to this beautiful city, to have peace of mind, safety, security, and I couldn't believe it.
He says officers told him he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that at least one of the people in the house were known to the police. Physically, he's recovering. Mentally, it's a bigger challenge.
Any kind of noise scares me. I get frightened. I'm scared of the darkness.
Over the past 10 months, Ahmadirad says he's heard very little from the Coquitlam RCMP. Every time he reaches out, he's told there's no update and no suspect. His mind plagued, knowing that the people who shot him are still out free.
I don't know why the process is going slowly, and they put the public safety at risk, and also my safety could be at risk.
The Coquitlam RCMP say it's a complex investigation and officers continue to gather evidence. Police understand when someone has been affected that the process may seem to take too long for them. Police need to do a number of things during an investigation, and all this takes time. Ahmadirad says the entire process has been made more difficult as a new immigrant, with no local support system and a language barrier. But still, he's committed to getting justice. On the morning of January 10th, Ahmadirad's life changed forever. He hopes that by sharing his story, anyone with information will come forward so that those responsible can be held accountable. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
That bystander we saw was shot earlier this year, but today marks a terrible milestone in the history of Lower Mainland gang violence. 15 years ago, 6 men were shot and killed inside a high-rise condo tower, 2 of them innocent bystanders. It was known as the Surrey Six. Their deaths were orchestrated by Red Scorpion gang leader Jamie Bacon. He is serving an 18-year sentence for conspiracy to murder in connection with the worst gangland slaying in the province. After years of talk and speculation, 90 acres on the west side of Vancouver could soon see major changes. The city of Vancouver has revealed new development plans that could more than double the neighborhood's population. As Isabel Regam tells us, the proposal has its supporters, but some residents are voicing concerns.
This is Jericho Lands on Vancouver's west side. It's currently home to a longtime military base, several dozen homes leased to military families, and to a private school. The vision, 3 towers up to 38 stories, dozens of smaller buildings, along with acres of parks and community centers. 2 concepts with different layouts are proposed. Both would house up to 18,000 people, doubling the neighborhood's population. Too significant of a jump, says this resident.
It's going to destroy the place, I'm sorry.
In what ways?
Well, just the sheer numbers, because right now this is a bit crowded now, a little congested. Plus, with the sky train coming in is going to take away the beauty. It's time for me to move.
For others, it means more places to live in a coveted area.
This is what I've heard. It's going to be more rental opportunities. And I don't know, maybe.
So for you, this is good news?
For me, yes.
The lands are owned by the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations since 2016, along with the Federal Canada Lands Company, while the City of Vancouver is facilitating the planning process. City staff say Indigenous culture will be at the center of the land development, listing examples that include 20 acres of new parkland, longhouses, and a public space in the middle of the site.
I think this site presents a tremendous opportunity to bring together Indigenous knowledge with Western knowledge together.
The exact mix of housing options and size of buildings has yet to be determined. That raises red flags for this nearby resident.
Personally, I feel wary about that because anytime that I see development moving into an area, I worry about my own housing, and I'm somebody who's an artist and struggles with affordable rent in this city.
The City of Vancouver is asking for public feedback online. Then, the plan will need numerous approvals from City Council, the first scheduled for next year. If approved, shovels could hit the ground in 2025. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
COVID restrictions are being lifted in parts of BC, and it relates to how many people can attend indoor events. Val Perry is here live now, and Val, it's good news for people who host events and for those who attend them. So what are the changes?
It's absolutely good news for a lot of people. Capacity limits are about to be lifted at some organized events and gatherings. That includes sporting events, indoor concerts, theaters, arts events, any gathering that requires a vaccine passport to get in. As of next Monday, those venues will be able to operate at 100% capacity. So that's the day after the 2-dose vaccine requirement kicks in. Weddings and funerals will also be able to open up to 100% capacity. And you'll be able to move around in restaurants and pubs. No more having to stay at your own table.
We're hoping to leverage the benefits of the vaccine card, and this is an important first step of that, and we'll be monitoring carefully and looking at whether we can take away additional restrictions depending on how things evolve over the next few weeks.
Now, there are other restrictions that will stay in place. Regional health orders and restrictions will still be in place. That's in Northern Health, Interior Health, and the Eastern Fraser Valley, where there's been a lower rate of immunization and a higher rate of COVID. For now, they will remain at 50%. The indoor mask requirement is still in place for everyone in the province. And while your wedding guest list can be longer, there's still no dancing. That rule remains in place.
Okay, and Belle, Dr. Henry also announced she'll be providing monthly data on COVID in schools. So what does the latest information show? What did she tell us today?
Well, across BC, there has been a decrease in children getting COVID. And Dr. Henry believes that mandatory masks in schools is a contributing factor. She says the biggest source of COVID infections in children right now is from outside the classroom. Let's look at the rate of COVID among children up to October 12th. Now, if you look at this, the light blue line, that's children age 5 to 8. The dark blue line is children age 9 to 11. And you can see how cases of COVID surged in both age groups within the beginning of the new school year in those first 2 weeks. Then the numbers peaked in late September and now are in a dramatic downward trend.
I do believe masks are important. I've said that many times in certain environments, and yes, it is important, particularly when you're moving around people that outside the classroom, etc. So it is one of the important tools, but it does tell us that the other measures we have in place are also important in the schools.
Dr. Henry says diagnosed cases of COVID in children up to 11 years old were primarily in regions with lower community vaccine coverage. And moving forward in terms of vaccine for children age 5 to 11, Dr. Henry says it will be provided by immunizers who have experience in giving vaccine to children. But the details of how and when are still being worked out.
Val Perry live for us tonight. Thank you. And in terms of daily cases, BC has been riding a bumpy plateau in recent weeks. The province is reporting 560 new infections today, and 5 more people have died. At 382, the fourth wave has brought a record number of hospitalizations. 146 of those patients are in intensive care. 124 of them have not received even one single dose of vaccine. Vancouver Coastal Health is taking control of a housing society that saw one of the province's worst COVID outbreaks. More than 40 residents of Little Mountain Place died last winter. After an investigation, the health authority found inadequate infection control, poor cleaning practices, and staffing shortages. Coastal Health will take over 3 long-term homes run by the Little Mountain Residential Care and Housing Society. And for the second time during the pandemic, we're entering flu season. This time, to encourage British Columbians to get that flu shot, the province is making them free for everyone. Health officials are warning people's immunity may be lower this season. That's because of last year's influenza rate being unusually low. They say it's vital for anyone 6 months and older to visit a pharmacy to get their shot. This will relieve pressure on the healthcare system, which is already strained by COVID-19. Well, drugs worth $183,000 have been seized at a prison in Abbotsford. The package includes crystal meth and was found last Monday at the Matsqui Institution. That's a federal medium security facility. Staff found the drugs. Now, sniffer dogs and ion scanners are often used to prevent drugs from getting inside the jail. The prison was on lockdown in 2020 after $160,000 worth of drugs and cell phones were also discovered. Police have ticketed the 21-year-old driver of a Tesla caught on camera, apparently asleep at the wheel, driving across a busy bridge. The woman is seen with her seat reclined as she dozes in and out of sleep. The car made its way across the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge last week. Police eventually tracked her down, handing her a $368 ticket along with 6 demerit points. Now, it's illegal for people to use the autopilot function on their self-driving cars here in BC, but in Ontario, driverless cars have been allowed on the road since 2019. An amazing rescue story is surfacing out of Tofino tonight after a float plane and boat collided yesterday. A family of 4 pulled from a fast-sinking plane by a witness. And a Howsett man says he and his deckhand watched in shock as a float plane clipped a water taxi, flipping it upside down. Officials got the call just after 4:30 yesterday afternoon, but by the time they arrived, responsive boaters had already pulled the passengers out of the water.
Everybody was in shock. Everybody is freezing, right? The water's cold.
6 people, including the pilot, were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The Transportation Safety Board and the RCMP are investigating. Well, speakers have made their final submissions in the Cullen Commission, marking an end to this stage of the inquiry into money laundering in BC.
In general terms, what sorts of topics were you speaking about with Mr. Pinnock in those conversations?
Justice Austin Cullen is now tasked with sifting through testimony from hundreds of witnesses, thousands of pages of evidence, and key testimony from lawmakers, including former ministers and Premier Christy Clark. Called by the NDP government, the inquiry began in May of 2019 to understand the full scope of money laundering in sectors such as gaming, real estate, luxury vehicles, banking, and more. There is no timeline on Cullen's final report. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here with the forecast. And Joe, 2 days in a row now, and you're just glowing out there.
I know. I'm just getting the last of the rays as the clouds roll in. I will not be glowing, unfortunately, for all of us tomorrow as the rain returns. But boy, that was a lovely day across the South Coast. Let me take you to the current temperatures right now. We were at seasonal. The sunshine was out. Fall colors at their peak. Right now down to a 9 at YVR, 12 out towards Abbotsford, and a 9 up towards Squamish. So we're feeling those chillier nights, but I've got a bump up in temperatures in the forecast just as these rounds of cloud roll in. In fact, you may have caught those stratocumulus you can see in the satellite, sort of those puffy lined clouds just rolling in the last hour. That is signifying change ahead. And taking you out to the bigger picture, there's a good old swirling low just off our coast, the first of 3 swirling lows that we will be visited by in the week ahead as I prepare my Halloween-esque forecast. And this is Going to get increasingly spooky, I'll say. We've got another one for Thursday afternoon and then another for Sunday. So first of all, let me get you through Wednesday's rainmaker, filling in sort of around 6, 7 a.m. It's a mainly first half of the day rain story. We might see conditions ease towards the second half of the day. And then I think I found one more block of sunshine, Anita. So I'll get you through the dwindling moments to view the foliage coming up. But I do have a few.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A group of volunteers is collecting menstrual products to ship to remote Indigenous communities around BC. They are sending a range of products to northern communities before winter sets in. The volunteers are still hoping to collect up to 6 months worth of supplies, and they're encouraging people to contribute. At least 12 to 15 communities will benefit from the collection drive, which runs until the end of this month.
Lightweight pads are probably the most common item to be used. We also accept tampons and reusable pads, cups, pretty much anything people use for menstruation. We only send up to communities what people request.
There are 40 locations around BC where people can donate supplies. The full list is available on the social media pages for Moontime Sisters BC. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm your host, Anita Bathe, and I just want to remind you that you can always watch our program live on our free app. It's called CBC Gem. Check it out. There's tons of great content beyond our show. Dozens have died in relentless downpours and severe flooding in parts of India. The relief efforts coming up. Well, a woman in Nova Scotia is inspiring her neighbors to help the monarch butterfly. Colleen Jones spoke to Charlene McDonald, who is one of many gardeners taking part in the David Suzuki Foundation's Butterfly Way program.
It just went well beyond anything I expected it to do.
It might be October, but Charlene McDonald still has things blooming in her garden.
There, and look what's on the plant.
Bees.
Bees, yeah, we love to see happy bees.
Welcome to Charlene McDonald's garden. She's a Butterfly Way ranger. It's a volunteer job. She's part of the David Suzuki Foundation to get communities across Canada planting pollinator-friendly gardens.
It's been really fabulous. I had no idea there was this many people that felt the same way and were willing to volunteer, because that's what it is.
Since the spring, she's recruited 60 other people throughout Lunenburg County to get busy planting, especially native plants.
But we've actually put gardens in all the way across to Middleton, out in the 40s, down to New Ross. It's been really tremendous. People have really gotten interested in it.
Fearing the loss of pollinators like bees and butterflies, especially the monarchs, there's now a pipeline of people volunteering, not just here, but right across Canada. They've built a cross-Canada trail called the Butterfly Way.
I think it's stupendous, and it's all volunteer-driven. Like, it's so simple to do to me, and I've been really amazed at all the different ideas. I grew plants and gave them away.
Charlene's garden's complete with a butterfly pit stop.
This is part of the St. John's wort here.
She's working with her best recruit, 5-year-old granddaughter Alexa, collecting seeds.
A girl, and sometimes if you take at the end of it and sort of stick it in, look.
Now, is all of this making a difference? Well, the proof might be in her own garden, which was full of monarchs this year.
It's been incredible, just not monarchs, but just the butterflies and the bees, and learning that there are so many other things that are pollinators that one wouldn't ordinarily consider.
They're just the seeds I've started collecting this year.
On her deck, she has a tickle trunk full of seeds she's drying and will either give away or soon start planting them in her pollinator grow-op.
This is from the Nicotiana plant, so that's all seed pods in there. And as it dries out, the seeds will fall in the bag for me.
So you might think the gardening season's over, but for Charlene McDonald and little Alexa, their indoor winter growing season is just about to start. Colleen Jones, CBC News, First South.
least 27 people have died after torrential rains triggered landslides and floods in southern India. Some residents forced to flee without warning. As the CBC's Salima Shivji reports, these record-breaking rains outside of monsoon season are likely here to stay.
After days of pounding rain, the destruction was swift. The reaction, helpless. Homes completely battered by the torrential rain and flash floods hitting Kerala over such a short period. Some residents only had minutes to run for their lives. The water burst into my house at night. All of our stuff is lost, this man says. We only have the clothes on our backs. Rescue efforts are ongoing with the Indian military deployed. At least 24 people have died and many others are missing.
And one family completely lost 6 members of the family.
Rivers across Kerala so swollen that officials have evacuated thousands of people. The threat of landslides is ever present.
There are 5 shops here. This is totally washed out.
Even as some make do and carry on with their plans. This inventive couple took a cooking pot to get to their wedding venue. It was also flooded, but that didn't stop the celebrations or local news filming it. Other parts of India are also suffering, gushing waters trapping people inside, forcing the army to step in. This is record-breaking rain outside of the usual monsoon season, and climate experts say this is the new normal, with the Arabian Sea warming at an alarming rate faster than other oceans, trapping more moisture.
We cannot do anything about increasing rainfall. We cannot stop that. So the immediate step is to adapt and then go for mitigation strategies to avoid the disaster.
Strategies like an efficient warning system for locals to leave fast before the rains hit. For now, the waters have eased somewhat, but there's little reprieve, with more heavy rain in the forecast. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Vancouver.
The RCMP says it's working with U.S. and Haitian authorities after the abduction of 17 missionaries, including a Canadian in Haiti. The FBI is now involved in efforts to free the hostages. And as Rafi Boudjikanian reports, the Haitian gang behind it is demanding millions in ransom.
Shocking headlines, but concerns about safety or security not new for those in the know.
Security has imploded. It's become impossible to pass different parts of the city without negotiating access with gangs.
Global Medic was in the country just recently following the deadly quake in August, part of international disaster relief, but with precautions on their minds then, and now worries about the chilling effect this kidnapping could have on much-needed aid.
It's incredibly frustrating because this is clearly motivated by money, and the impact is on the most vulnerable that don't get clean water and don't get food and don't get the very things that keep the masses alive because of this.
There are few details from officials about the latest situation on the ground. The RCMP says it's working with American authorities and the White House.
The reason we don't get into operational details is because our objective is to bring them home.
That there are children involved, one less than a year old, complicates things, and not just for the negotiators, says this expert.
Really, that child could be a liability to the kidnappers, and then you could work on something in terms of good faith. Release the child, and we can start working on getting the money and work on that.
But with hundreds of gang kidnappings a year, this Haitian advocate for refugees says countries such as Canada and the US must also think about how to prevent the next one.
Start by making sure there's no supplies of arms and munitions coming in Haiti, because we don't have manufacturing of arms and munitions. So it's certainly coming from somewhere, and mainly from the States.
Meanwhile, Global Affairs Canada says it's in touch with the family of the Canadian who is among those abducted in Haiti. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
A giant puppet symbolizing the plight of Syrian refugees is drawing some emotional responses during her trek across Europe.
She represents all of the children who have had to leave their homes. and are looking with their family and some without any family for a new life.
The 3-meter-tall puppet known as Little Amal started near the Syrian border and will travel more than 8,000 kilometers before her journey ends. Organizers hope to raise awareness about the refugee crisis caused by the war in Syria, and in particular, how it is affecting children. The project, known as The Walk, has already traveled through 8 countries and will finish in England next month. Well, polls show most Canadian parents will sign up their children to get vaccinated. But if you're among the many who are hesitating, you're not alone. We hear the concerns next.
In the past few years, Canada has been invaded by American filmmakers. They've been attracted by our cheap dollar and the quality of our technical crews. But now there's a taxing problem that might mean fewer American films made in this country. Karen Webb reports.
Marks are from the center of the
This
wheel.
is an American made-for-TV movie set in New York City 50 years ago, but shot entirely on the streets of Vancouver.
Action.
But this may be the last Disney movie shot in Canada, unless the Canadian government changes one of its tax laws. It has only recently begun to enforce a regulation that would tax American movie stars on the money they make in Canada.
Our pictures are put together contingent on our ability to put a star in them. Without the star, there's no picture, and without a picture, there's no infusion of capital up here in British Columbia.
None of the Hollywood names shooting in Vancouver would talk about the tax, but the technical people working on the movies will, because they're the people who will lose their jobs. They understand the deal. No star, no movie, no work. In British Columbia, 96% of the technicians are Canadian.
We're very worried because in British Columbia, there are between 3,600 and 4,000 people who make a living full-time in the motion picture industry.
That means a lot to Canada. That means
to present their case to the federal government, the BC film industry put together a video. And to make their pitch, they used a provincial cabinet minister.
And I'm appealing to the federal administration, the Minister of Finance, to act very quickly.
The video is going to Ottawa this week. The industry is hoping Michael Wilson takes the time to watch it and changes the regulations soon.
The whim of people in Hollywood, it's like a brush fire. They just say, it's no good to go there anymore. And they don't. And then you have to start a long, slow process, much like the one we've been through in the last 8 years, to turn them on again.
Rather than woo Hollywood again, the province would rather pressure Ottawa. This weekend, the government announced it was willing to guarantee a $50 million loan to turn this old warehouse into a soundstage.
Because we feel so strongly that the federal government are going to reverse their decision on the withholding tax.
No one expects the Canadian film industry could pick up the slack. The people who have learned on Hollywood movie sets say the Canadian industry will suffer as well if the American stars pull out.
It's fine that we have all this American activity, and it gives us as craftsmen a chance to practice our craft, but you know that there's going to be Canadian producers who are going to be relying on these crews, our crews, that have been really trained on American productions.
Now these people are waiting to hear what Ottawa has to say about their jobs. Finance Department officials said no one could talk about the future of the film industry until a decision on the tax law has been made. Karen Webb, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We migrated to Canada, to this beautiful city, to have peace of mind, safety, security, and I couldn't believe it. I'm still in shock.
A delivery driver who was shot multiple times outside a house in Coquitlam is pleading for answers. RCMP confirmed he was an innocent victim. He survived the shooting back in January, but says no one has been arrested.
So Dave, you can go take that sign down?
Nope.
backlash over Surrey's decision to ban political signs on private property. One councillor who voted against the decision says it seems the rule is directed toward people supporting keeping the RCMP rather than switching to a municipal police force. We'll have that full story coming up in the show. And restrictions placed on indoor and outdoor gatherings in BC are being lifted in some parts. As of October 25th, as long as people attending are double vaxxed, events like Canucks games can return to 100% capacity. This change won't apply to Northern Health, Interior Health, and the Eastern Fraser Valley. Well, Pfizer has officially asked Health Canada to approve the first coronavirus vaccine for kids aged 5 to 11. And as health officials pore over safety and efficacy data, even the prospect of that change has officials and doctors weighing the next steps. Because as Deanna Sumanak-Johnson explains, the rollout for kids faces some real hurdles.
For this family, Pfizer asking Health Canada to approve their vaccine for younger kids felt like one step closer to peace of mind.
It's news I've been waiting for and my family's been waiting for a very long time. In fact, when my son heard about the approvals coming to Canada, he actually cheered. And he's 9.
Many Canadians share her excitement. A new survey by Angus Reid of 812 Canadian families says about 50% of parents say they will vaccinate their kids as soon as the vaccine is available. But almost a quarter said they would not vaccinate their kids. But protection for another currently unvaccinated demographic could help contain the virus.
That means that possibly in the future, instead of having a large 5th wave, that there could be, slowly an end to this.
Even if approved, officials are cautioning against using the existing stock of Pfizer, which was dosed for adults.
I think that drawing up pediatric doses from the existing vials is not something that is recommended at this point for a number of reasons.
Getting pediatric doses could take until the new year. Despite that, some provinces are hinting they're already planning the rollout.
All done. Yes, it certainly is a possibility to have something like a mass vaccine clinic at a school, not necessarily during the school hours.
I will say that it will mostly be done by the immunizers that are experienced in providing vaccine to children in clinics.
All of this hinges on Health Canada's approval of data from a vaccine trial that had smaller numbers. The agency is now poring over safety and efficacy data, weighing benefits against risks. The decision thought to be weeks away. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
And a warning from Britain's Prime Minister tonight. The country is facing a difficult winter as it battles the fallout from a sharp increase in COVID-19 cases. As Tessa Arcilla reports, there's also concern about the speed of the vaccine rollout for teenagers.
The UK has recorded 223 COVID-19 deaths within 28 days of a positive test. That is the biggest daily jump since March of this year. Today, more than 43,000 daily infection numbers were also recorded. Hospitalizations and deaths are on the rise, with just over 7,000 people currently in hospital. The government has warned that the country could be facing a challenging winter. And there are several reasons why the country might be facing a rise in infections.
With other respiratory virus infections, with all of what that means, not only again for schools, but also for overwhelming the NHS. So I think if you add that into the mix, then the worry is that autumn, winter is going to get very, very messy.
Adding to that perfect storm is a slow rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine among younger people. There's also a slow rollout of the booster shot for the vulnerable population. Around 5 million eligible people are still waiting for that booster vaccine. Some experts say that ironically, Britain might have been a victim of its own early success. Many of the vulnerable population had their first and second doses in the early part of the year, and efficacy of the vaccine wanes over several months, so now would have been the time to get that booster shot. In addition to all of this is behavior. Fewer people are wearing masks or observing social distancing. In contrast, other European countries like France, Italy, and Spain have brought down infection rates to their lowest level since mid-2020. Tessa Arcilla, CBC News, London.
Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been wave after wave, and it's left many of us wondering if a post-COVID future is even in sight. Many scientists say curbing COVID-19 hinges on vaccination rates and the accessibility of tools like rapid testing. For more on this, Dr. Michael Warby joins us tonight. He grew up in Salmon Arm and is now with the University of Arizona studying the origins of viruses. Thanks for being here today.
Very nice to be here. Thank you, Anita.
Now, vaccination rates in BC are not quite moving anymore, and we're seeing that a large-ish portion of people are choosing to stay unvaccinated. How dangerous do you think the situation is going to get for the people who don't get the shot?
Well, let me put it this way. This virus is so contagious that everyone in the world over the next probably 6 months or so, and everyone in BC, will either get the vaccine or get infected naturally. So there's going to be no getting away from this virus, and it's a nasty virus, as people know, and the risks from getting naturally infected just dwarf those from the vaccine, which is very safe.
So is that sort of when things end, when either everybody has the shot or everybody's been infected?
Well, again, people may have heard of these so-called breakthrough infections, which is when someone is vaccinated, but they still end up being infected. And so the vaccines are really good at keeping you out of the hospital or dying. But this virus is going to be around like flu for the rest of our lives. There's really no way it's going to be eradicated, and it's probably going to become a seasonal event, probably in the winter months, like other respiratory pathogens. And so we need to brace for not the COVID era ending, but transitioning out of this period where it's the most scary because, you still have people who don't have immunity yet.
You've studied other pandemics like the Spanish flu and HIV/AIDS. So how is COVID-19 different from those?
Those ones, my own experience with working on the origin has been really different because this time it's happening in real time, and it's not something that we're looking back on retrospectively. And so by doing that, you get this appreciation for how much evolution shapes the virus over even short periods of time. It's similar to the Spanish flu in terms of the number of deaths that it causes per person infected, but it's a very stealthy virus because it can, leave no trace in some people who just are asymptomatic, and that makes it trickier to hunt down and find people who are infected.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing that. Just before we let you go, we hear about these rapid tests all the time. Can you tell us how accessibility to those kits might actually help fight the pandemic? Break that down for us.
Sure, yeah. And so countries like the UK are doing a really good job of this. There's essentially free tests that you can take home and use. They're like a pregnancy test where it only takes a few minutes to get a yes, no. They're not as sensitive as PCR tests, but what they will tell you is if you're loaded with virus and are likely to be infectious to other people. And this tool, in the States and in Canada, especially in Canada, is really not being used the way it could and should be, that all of us should have access to these sorts of tests so that if we're going to go visit our grandfather, for example, before we make the trip, you take that quick test and find out, oh, wow, I'm loaded with virus. Maybe not best to expose someone who's still at considerable risk.
Dr. Michael Warby, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you very much.
A record drought, the driest year since 1924 in California. Why there's no sign of any change to come. That's next. And at 6:39, you are looking at a live shot of the moon. What a beautiful night and a gorgeous and dry day on the coast. But that sunny stretch is done. Johanna has the details on how much rain we're expecting next.
Who's buying and selling your personal information? In 3 minutes or less. It's free to use TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, right? And there's no cost to do that online quiz, sign up for that free game, or browse Amazon, right? Wrong. Every time you share personal information online, you're paying a price. Oops. Your private data is valuable. It's literally being bought and sold.
Most of the time when information is being bought or sold, it's being done by what are called data brokers. And these are companies that are in the business of assembling profiles about people or groups.
Your age, gender, and location, favorite shows, songs, and games, any personal information that can be collected about you is money in the bank for a data broker. Cha-ching! Data brokers build profiles of people like you and me and sell them, sometimes to businesses like insurance companies or banks that are investigating potential customers, or to services that help you search for people online. Most often, though, data brokers sell profiles to advertisers who want to personalize their ads. How did they know my favorite color was red? Sometimes that profiling hurts more than it helps. Take online shopping, for example.
The price that you're shown will often be based on what they know about you. Your age, the kind of computer you're using, even the browser you're using, data they've collected about your shopping history, all of these things go into sometimes making things more expensive than if they knew less about you.
So now that you know how much your personal data is worth, how do you protect it? Well, don't overshare. If you're filling out a form, for example, only do the parts that are mandatory and skip the rest. Too much information. Adjust your privacy settings everywhere. On your phone, apps, games, and web browser. Look for settings that allow you to block ad trackers. You can also download a browser add-on that will do that for you. Or start using a search engine that's tracker-free. Because the best way to keep your private information private is to stop data brokers from collecting it in the first place. For CBCKidsNews.ca, I'm Sarah Chaudhry.
A Kamloops woman was just trying to post a photo online to a buy and sell group, but her photobombing husky stole the show. Now Sadie the dog is an online star. Alessia Willard was snapping a shot of a baby gate to post on a Facebook buy and sell group with more than 48,000 members. Now Sadie is a fixture on buy and sell posts, helping draw eyes and drive sales. Doesn't stop there, though. The younger generation on TikTok is sharing Sadie's goofy grin. A video of the wide-eyed doggy at the groomers has earned more than 1 million views worldwide and counting. The New West Animal Shelter is looking for the owner of a hitchhiking kitten. This lost kitty was discovered in the Sapperton neighborhood yesterday. Rescuers believe the free-riding feline stowed away under the hood of a car from Vancouver. Anyone with information to help the cat come back can call New Westminster Animal Services. Dogs and cats, raining cats and dogs is sure something California could use officially in its driest 12-year stretch. Joe, tell us more about that dire situation.
Yeah, excellent segue there. We are getting new information from the Western Regional Climate Center, adding up the rainfall and snowfall across California in the past 12 months, coming in at less than half of the averages. And this is part of a much bigger trend continuing drought conditions that are now rivaling those that we haven't seen in a century. The 1976 drought of California, $1 billion in economic losses. Now there is concerns we could surpass that in California. So this was big news this week as U.S. Vice President Harris visited U.S.'s largest wet reservoir, Lake Mead, to present their Build Back Better agenda, their infrastructure to combat climate change, standing in front of a lake that's dropped 45 meters in just 20 years. It is only 2/3 full. Now 50 of 58 California counties under emergency drought precautions. Take a listen to Harris saying that Lake Mead is really just a snapshot for the rest of the country.
What is the Build Back Better agenda? It's about climate, it's about families, and it's about jobs. And it's about health. And all of these issues are present when we look at the issues that are impacting Lake Mead as an example of what is happening around the country.
But infrastructure is only one potential solution. Take a look at the latest drought map issued for the Western U.S. The darkest reds, those are the exceptional drought conditions that have been in place for months on end. And it's something that, of course, we saw north of the border this year. But it's Southern California that experts are worried actually going into a process known as aridification. So rather than a long-term drought, concerns that we might be moving towards a more temporarily dry climate. And speaking to firefighters and climatologists north of our border, something that eventually we might be concerned about as well. So keeping you posted on very much an evolving story with the management of water also being that third factor, climate change, infrastructure, and just how water is being managed in the West for over a century. Taking us back to the north side of the border, where we are definitely on the other side of fall. It's interesting, our atmospheric rivers that we have already seen once of this year, hitting Northern California, but not looking to hit the south. Very two different contrasting stories. So we've got lots more rain moving in to our neck of the woods over the next 24 hours. Maybe just a 10-millimeter story for the south coast, getting heavier amounts for central and northern BC. But watch as I take you through Thursday. This is a second low that there's been some chatter about. If you're a fellow weather weenie checking out the models, this low is a remnant tropical storm from the Western Pacific. And there was some concerns this could bring hurricane force winds to our coast. It's looking to slide up the northwestern coast. So we'll watch for those winds in Haiti for Thursday. We're watching for just rain and some gusty winds on the south coast for Thursday, but a third low on Sunday might warrant some wind warnings. Meanwhile, showers tomorrow afternoon for Williams Lake, Kelowna, and Cranbrook. Just a little blip. You'll get back to the sunshine for Thursday into Friday. And again, not a huge rainfall story, maybe picking up 40 to 60 millimeters for Tofino northward. 14 for Vancouver tomorrow. Nice little warm up on Thursday, 16. Our seasonals now for this time of the year down around 12 for afternoon highs. So finally hitting the 15-degree mark as well. And Anita, I'll have to keep you posted on that Sunday storm. I think we'll get a sunny break Saturday afternoon. Just say you were planning on visiting the pumpkin patch. I'm going to aim for Saturday afternoon. Just saying.
Maybe I'll meet you there.
Yeah. Good plan.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, Edmonton and Calgary elected new mayors last night, both making history in their respective city. As Julia Wong reports, the two will be heading the most diverse councils either city has ever seen.
Calgary and Edmonton's next mayors made history Monday night. Amarjeet Sohi becomes the first racialized mayor of Edmonton. Jyoti Gondek will be the first female mayor in Calgary.
I think we have now demonstrated that Calgary understands we are normalizing women in positions of leadership.
The pair will lead the most diverse councils either city has ever seen. The overwhelming majority of seats in both Edmonton and Calgary are filled by women and people of color.
Diversity is so fundamental for making good decisions.
Sohi, a former federal Liberal cabinet minister, and Gondek, a city councillor since 2017, will both lean progressive in a largely conservative Alberta. The COVID-19 pandemic, the economic downturn, and a federal childcare plan are top priorities for both mayors-elect. On the latter, Gondek is clear. If the province cannot strike a deal, she's willing to work with Ottawa directly.
I would be interested in working with other mayors across the province to see if that's a model that we can all leverage.
Still, both Gondek and Sohi hope they can avoid the same contentious relationships their predecessors had with Alberta Premier Jason Kenney.
The message for the Premier is that I'm very interested in building a strong relationship.
We haven't always agreed on some policy proposals, but I have always been very respectful.
For his part, Kenney says,
I hope that we can find a collaborative and positive working relationship.
in the end, voters just want to see their elected officials get along, says this pollster.
There is a sense in this province that we've got important tasks in front of us and that we want these governments, levels of government to cooperate.
Cooperate, so hopefully there are calmer waters ahead in a strained relationship between the cities and the province. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Start your engines or click your mouse. How one Halifax gamer is lighting up the virtual racetrack.
April 29th, 9:50 a.m. local. I got diagnosed with metastatic thyroid cancer. In that moment, I felt I disintegrated into the chair. My wife was 33 weeks pregnant, just started a new job, just moved into a new house. The things that, you're doing often at this kind of age. And to say my world was rocked is an understatement for sure. It's like I don't even remember what happened that week. I remember picking up the kids from, we had one son at the time, and picking him up from daycare and just, obviously he doesn't get it, but I'm hugging him tight. It was surreal. That whole next week was a blur. Once I got diagnosed with metastatic thyroid cancer this year, I've just continued to talk about and promote how much physical fitness and physical activity of any form, any shape, size, duration, intensity, anything has really helped me in coping and moving through this. It's been such a great outlet. So I launched the Get You Active Challenge, which was something I came up with in working with Mr. Jeff Eaton at Young Adult Cancer Canada. Basically a way to promote the benefits of physical activity and exercise for people that may be going through with similar situations as myself. But it's not just cancer, anybody of any age. I've said anybody with any body. Awareness is nothing without action. And so, that's why the Get You Active Challenge was about getting bodies moving, getting people up and active and promoting physical activity and wellness. And we've also created a site where people can donate to our cause in support of Young Adult Cancer Canada and the Get You Active Challenge. The response has been nothing short of humbling. I can't get over it. As of this morning, we've raised almost $7,200.
The funds in Mike's Get You Active Challenge will be used to connect young adults just like him to other young adults. YAC runs a community of about 5,000 young adults across the country right now. They are living with, through, and beyond cancer, and we are here to support them in that pursuit, and grateful to have partners engaged with us like Mike and all of the people that have supported him in this effort.
Whether I got to run, walk, crab walk, skateboard, no matter what it is, on my hands and knees, for the final mile of the race, I'll be carrying the Young Adult Cancer Canada flag over my shoulder, bringing as much attention to this very awesome and very important cause on Sunday. And like I said, I'll be dedicating every step of it. Before, after, all my energy, all my heart and soul I'll be putting into this on Sunday in support of Young Adult Cancer Canada and the many people that have been faced by this awful situation.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate the achievements and resilience of women with CBC Vancouver's Angela Starrett at the annual Dress for Success Luncheon. Learn more at vancouver.dressforsuccess.org. And CBC Vancouver returns as exclusive media sponsors of the Corleone Men's Choir. Don't miss their upcoming Remembrance Day concerts in November. Learn more at corleone.org.
A Canadian is tearing up the track in one of North America's most popular sports, or at least its online counterpart. Brett Ruskin has more on the NASCAR star who does all his racing from inside his Halifax home.
This is how Keegan Leahy drives on the road, but this is how he drives on the internet.
New race leader Keegan Leahy.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a NASCAR driver. And admittedly, I never became a real-life race car driver, but somehow I found myself into the sim world.
And if this looks like a real NASCAR race, that's the point.
It's meant to be as close to a real-life simulation as possible. So a lot of guys like me, they put together a rig. The wheel's motorized, so whenever you're turning, it's going to try to self-center. The chair just came out of my uncle's old Oldsmobile car.
But it is still just a video game. How hard could it be?
We'll see, I guess. You wanna get on my rig and find out? I do, I would love to. Watch your knees on here. I got it. Nice. Oh, no. All right, so your car is destroyed.
Okay, so it's hard. That's what makes this series intense, especially last week's final championship race.
Green flag in the air.
Leahy was second for most of the race, but took the lead with 76 laps to go.
Leader Keegan Leahy leaves turn 4 and sees the white flag, 1 lap to go.
Oh, and the winner of this race, they take home $100,000.
Final time at turn 4 for the driver out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Keegan Leahy is the 2021 NASCAR iRacing champion.
It's been so long trying to, and it was just such an amazing mixture of excitement. I'm going to get the same championship ring that any other NASCAR champion would have. They're inviting me out to Phoenix to accept my check, and I'll be there watching the real-life finale as well, joining in on the celebrations.
And so Keegan Leahy takes home $100,000. As for what he's going to do with the money, he says he's going to save most of it, pay off some student debt, maybe go on a trip. One thing he won't be doing is buying a new chair. He is going to stick with that Oldsmobile chair from his uncle's car. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Many Canadian restaurants have been challenged to meet ever-changing health protocols over the course of the pandemic. In St. John, one Donair shop has come up with a creative and contactless delivery system. And as Graham Thompson reports, it's keeping people safe and winning them some big smiles.
I think it's pretty cool. One of our employees had an RC remote control car and had a good idea to have a trailer on it and bring it out to our patrons, especially the kids. So it's been well received and I think it's pretty cool. The kids like coming out and seeing the RC car bring out their meals, and to see the excitement on the kids' faces is pretty cool. It kind of makes you be a kid yourself, remember those times. Can't help but smile. The family comes up to our food trucks, places an order.
Have a poutine, please.
Sure, absolutely. We'll track where they're sitting, then we simply put the food on the back of the trailer. We bring the truck out to them, and the kids or the parents get to take the food off the truck. It's a bit of an experience, just a little extra something that makes them smile. Well, obviously we're meeting our social distance requirements. We're less engaging as far as people standing in line and handling food.
Get the boxes, please. Okay, one.
The weather's been absolutely fantastic this fall. It's been so nice. It creates a bit of an atmosphere where families can come, sit outside, enjoy a meal.
Joy, oh my goodness.
We thought during these times with the doom and gloom with COVID, when the kids show up here to deliver meals to the kids via remote control vehicles, would bring smiles to their faces during these very trying times. And hopefully they'll be left with some sort of positive impact on COVID. Thus far, the reactions from kids, well, the smiles on their faces will say it all. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the kids being very excited.
Who doesn't love a remote control car? I'd be excited too, turning the pandemic into something fun. Well, thanks for watching us tonight. Dan Burritt is here at 11 o'clock after the National with more local news, and we are back here tomorrow night. Have a wonderful evening.